The last topic in retail site location is lease negotiation. Once a site is chosen, retailers still have a lot of decisions to make, including the lease. And there are two types of leases that a retailer might enter into. Um, to be honest, in the real world, almost all leases are some kind of combination of these methods. Rarely will you see something as straightforward as how we're going to review it here, but we will define the types of leases and talk about them in order here. So the first type of a lease that a retailer might enter into is what we call a percentage lease. And a percentage lease is a lease in which the rent is based on a percentage of your sales. So the retailer is going to pay a fee based on how much they make. And so there could be a percentage lease with a specified minimum, meaning that retailers are going to pay a minimum lease amount regardless of what their sales are. So regardless of your sales, you might have a $2,500 lease, but of course, if your sales are higher than that, you will have to pay the extra percentage. There's also leases with a specified maximum in which a retailer pays the shopping center a percentage of sales up to a maximum amount. And this allows the retailer a little bit of relief as they increase their sales. So you might say that you're going to pay us 10% of your sales up to $2,500. So if the retailer has a very successful month in terms of sales, they don't have to pay any more than what that maximum amount is agreed to. There's also a sliding scale percentage lease, and this is when the percentage of sales your rent is going to decrease as your sales go up. So you might pay 4% of sales on the first $20,000 you make, and then only 3% on the next $20,000 that you make. And this rewards retailers that are high performing. And so you don't have to pay as much rent per sales dollar as your sales increase. So percentage leases are the first type of lease. The second type of lease is a fixed rate lease, and this is when the retailer is going to pay a fixed rate per month over the life of the lease. And honestly, this one is much more common in retail today. So this might be that you're going to pay $1,000 a month for 1 year, and then you're going to pay $1,500 a month in year 2. Right, so that's a type of graduated lease where it's going to increase over a specific period of time. So most leases are, signed for 10 or 15 years. And so it's, it's okay for the retailer if that rent is going to increase year over year, as long as they know it in advance. Right, so percentage lease is based on your sales. Fixed rate lease is set up front where you're going to pay a fixed amount every month. Now, something you can talk about in the discussion boards is which one you would prefer as a retailer, and you can also talk about the pros and cons of each type of lease in the discussion board, and I'll comment in there as well, and we'll talk about why you might choose one over the other. Now, regardless of which type of lease you have, your lease is always going to have terms. So not only is your rent negotiable, but there are a few other aspects that retailers look for in a lease to protect themselves. And so we're going to look at 4 different clauses that a retailer might negotiate into their lease with their landlord. The first is a co-tenancy clause. Your co-tenancy clause requires that a certain percentage of a shopping center be leased out. It could also name specific retailers that are to remain open. So this protects the retailer from being stuck in a shopping center that is not full of retailers. So I don't know how many of you have been to the Target it used to be a Target in Macon off of Presidential Parkway. But the Target closed in February of this year, 2018. And since then, other retailers have also left the shopping center. So reasons why retailers are leaving the shopping center is because they no longer have that cumulative attraction. The drawing power is going down. So you might want to put a co-tenancy clause in your lease, because if the other stores in the shopping center close, you want to be able to break your lease too. So that's the first part of the co-tenancy clause. And that second part is being able to name specific retailers that you would require to be in the shopping center with you. So Gap there's an example in your book that talks about Gap and how they require at least four of 7 other retailers in the mall. So Gap might say, we're only going to open in this shopping mall if you also have a Banana Republic, an Abercrombie, a Macy's, etc. And again, it's making sure that that cumulative attraction is there to help with the drawing power. So that's the co-tenancy clause. A second clause is what we call the common area maintenance clause. The common area maintenance clause assigns specific responsibilities for taking care of the common areas. Now, we know that if we operate in a planned retail location, a lot of the common area maintenance is taken care of by the property management firm. But it doesn't hurt to protect yourself as a retailer and outline some of the specific responsibilities in your lease. And so you might want to make sure that, if your roof blows off in a storm, that not only is the property management firm going to fix it, but they're going to fix it within a certain amount of days. Or you might want to specify if a light bulb burns out outside of your store, it needs to be changed by, within a specific time frame. Again, just to protect your retail store, because you might have a certain quality that you want for your customers, and levels of customer service and cleanliness is part of that. So that common area maintenance clause can just further enhance your lease. The third clause is a prohibited use clause. The prohibited use clause is going to limit the shopping center management from leasing to certain kinds of tenants. And so if you are an apparel retailer in a shopping center, you might want to include a prohibited use clause that does not allow the landlord to lease to a bowling alley or a movie theater. And why would you not want a bowling alley or a movie theater in the same shopping center as you? Well, if you have a bowling alley or a movie theater, people are going to be parking and taking up spaces for hours at a time, taking up those parking spaces. So your customers may not be able to get close parking or ample parking. People tend to hang out outside of movie theaters and bowling alleys, and so that increases the amount of people in the shopping center. You might not want a dentist or a doctor's office nearby for the same reason. A lot of bars or off-track betting facilities are included in prohibited use clauses. If you are a toy store, you don't want an off-track betting store next door or a bar next door because it doesn't fit your family image. So there's lots of different retailers who use this prohibited use clause in an effort to keep out retailers they think might be harmful to their business. And then the last lease that we need to talk about is the exclusive use clause. And the exclusive use clause prohibits the shopping center management from leasing to retailers that sell competing products. So the exclusive use says that I get to be the only pizza store in this shopping complex. So you can't keep out all restaurants, but you can keep out all of your direct competitors. So that exclusive use clause keeps out your direct competitors. So it's important to think about which of these clauses are most important to you as a retailer and which ones you feel would be most important to negotiate into your lease. The other thing to consider is that you don't always get your way as the retailer. So as you're negotiating, you have to understand where you might have a little give and take. And so you have to think about the factors or the terms that might be most important to you and which ones you are able and willing to negotiate on, so the landlord feels that the agreement is mutual. And that concludes our discussion on location. So make sure that you do complete your location analysis assignment as part of Module 2 and get everything posted in the discussion board, and make sure you take your Module 2 quiz.